Hello everyone and welcome back to another math video. Today we're going to be looking at how do you graph absolute value, so similar to these problems that you see up on the screen here. Just a reminder, this is the speedrun version where we go through it pretty quickly. If you'd like the normal lesson, I will link that in the description below. All right, your Ricasso Recap starts now. Here's what you have to know before you start this lesson in 30 seconds or less. Firstly, you should know how to graph points on the coordinate plane. So if I say 0, -3, you should know how to put that on a graph. Secondly, you should know how to calculate rise over run when given a line and how it relates to slope. And lastly, you should know how to factor expressions, so similar to this problem that you see. If you don't know how to do these three things, graphing, rise over run, and factoring, please do not continue with this lesson. You are going to have a hard time. I would recommend, I'll put refresher videos in the description below. Please go watch those, learn that, come back to this video. All right, new lesson starts now. Here we go. So up on the screen, I have 4 absolute value problems, and they're graphs. All right, you can see it's a V. Sometimes it's flipped over. Okay, and what I would like for you to do is to pause the video and see if you can figure out the pattern here. Right? How do I know whether it's flipped over? How do I find what the vertex is? All right. So pause the video, and I'll give you a second to think here. All right, now that you've had some time to think, let's look at some patterns here. Number 1, only one of the graphs is flipped over. And that's this graph down here in the bottom right. And hopefully what you figured out, the reason it's flipped over is because this problem has a negative sign in the front of the absolute value. Okay? So if you have, the absolute value of x plus 5 minus 2, if there's a positive symbol in the front, then it will be shaped like a V. If there's a negative symbol in front of the graph, then it gets flipped upside down. Secondly, to find the vertex, basically where the graph starts, all you do is you look at the numbers that you can see. So, for example, I see a -9 here, -9. I see a 3 here, I see a 3 here. I see a -9 here, I see a -9. Now for the x coordinate, you'll notice it's reversed. So for example, this is a +1, it becomes -1. This is a -2, it becomes +2. This one has no number, we'll talk about that in a second, and then this one has a -3, it becomes +3. So whenever you have a absolute value, these are the absolute value symbols, right, those bars. Whenever you have an absolute value symbol, all right, the number on the inside is your x coordinate, and the number on the outside is your y coordinate for the vertex. Okay, and just remember that whatever's on the inside is reversed. Okay, and I once had a student say, well, it's like, think of the absolute value symbols as you're inside the car, right? Inside the car, you can turn the wheel left and right. Okay, and that's how you know it's your x coordinate, right? Because the x's go left and right. Now, let's talk about that 0 problem. There's an invisible 0 here, meaning this and this are the same problem. They look different, but they're the same. All right? Because adding 0 doesn't change anything. So this is where they get the invisible 0 from. So if you don't see numbers, then put zeros in. Now for this problem, it's helpful to see it on a graph. What happens if we change the number on the outside? Okay, so here there's a 1, right? It's an invisible 1, but there's a 1. What happens if we change it to a 2? Okay, here's the blue graph here. You can see it looks like it got a little skinnier, and let's try 3. 3 gets even more skinny. And so if you want to pause the video and try to figure out the pattern here, there is a pattern. Give you a second to think. All right, so the pattern is, not that, pattern is that the number in the front is the slope of each line. So for example, the slope of this line is 1 because of the 1 in the front. So on the red line, right, rise over run, we go up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, and that's how they calculate the line. Now, for the second problem, the slope here is 2 over 1 because of the 2 in the front. So for the blue line, we go 1, 2, 1, so up 2 over 1, there's our rise over 1, and so on and so forth, and the same thing for this one. Okay, so the number in the front tells you the slope of your lines. Lastly, what happens if there's a number on the inside, next to the x? What about this? Well, the answer is we don't ever leave a number in front of the x like that. So we're going to factor it out, meaning we start with this, and then we can factor a 5, because this is saying 5 times the absolute value of x minus 6. And the absolute value of any number is just the positive version. So the absolute value of 5 is just 5. So this becomes 5 absolute value x minus 6. And now this is the form we just looked at a second ago, right? This tells me the slope. I know there's an invisible 0 in here, okay? And we should be able to graph from there. We will do it real quickly. All right, here is the info, vertex, slope, and there's the graph. For the second problem, we need to think of negative 2x plus 6. What can we factor out of this? The whole thing, right? And let's factor out the negative 2. So if I factor out negative 2, I get this. And now remember, this is all in absolute value. So now let's split it. The absolute value of negative 2 times the absolute value of x minus 3. I guess we'll do the minus 7 at the end. And let's do the absolute value here. And now the absolute value of negative 2 is just, again, the positive version. So this becomes 2 absolute value x minus 3 minus 7. And then the vertex is 3, negative 7. So here's our vertex. It has a slope of 2 over 1. So boom and boom. And here's our graph. All right, here's our cool clock for today, which means that it is time for you to practice what you just learned. Go ahead and pause the video and try these 2 problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. Okay, for the first problem, you should have said the vertex is 0, negative 5, and the slope, is negative 1 over 1. That's why it's flipped upside down. And for the second problem, here is the work. Should have ended up with a vertex of 4, negative 9, and the slope is 3 over 1, and so here's the graph. All right, that's it for today. I hope you all have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.